Revealed, sinister secrets unearthed in the haunted shadows of the cursed Sahara Desert. Sarah did not believe in ghosts. But as she stood behind the greasy counter of the Sahara diner, the dim fluorescent lights flickering overhead, she couldn't shake a feeling that something unspeakable lurked just out of sight. The townsfolk had often whispered of the diner's dark past, tales of strange lights in the cornfields, children who went missing, never seen again. Tonight, however, the atmosphere was charged, thick with a sense of foreboding that seemed to seep through the cracked walls of the diner. The rain beat in urgent rhythm against the glass. Sarah scrubbed at a sticky table, her thoughts heavy. Her son Ben was at home, alone, lost in his imagination, wrestling with his own fears. A sudden flick of the diner door sent a rush of cold air through the room, causing her to shiver. She turned back to her work, dismissing the ill feelings that nagged at her. Then the phone rang. The shrill sound echoed, cutting through her thoughts like lightning. It was Ben. His voice trembled on the other end, each word laced with terror. "Mom! There are lights there dancing in the cornfields. It's so scary." Panic surged in Sarah's chest. She finished the call and bolted, her heart racing as she dashed to her beat-up car. The streets were deathly quiet as she drove, the rain blurring streetlights into ghostly halos. She could almost hear the warnings from the diner's regulars echoing in her mind. The diner was more than just a failing business, it was a relic of the town's haunting past, a place drenched in secrets and tragedy. With every turn of the wheel, the familiar landmarks morphed into something sinister. Shadows danced in corners of her vision, taunting her. She urged herself to breathe, but the weight of desperation clawed at her throat. Upon reaching home, Sarah flung the door open, greeted only by a silence that screamed. She raced toward Ben's room, where he stood wide-eyed, pointing toward the window. Out in the cornfield, the strange lights flickered ominously, weaving patterns like fireflies trapped in an otherworldly dance. "Mom, I saw shapes moving," he cried. The words ignited a primal fear deep within her. Before she could respond, a series of loud thuds echoed from behind. The house seemed to loom and breathe, its very walls heavy with unseen fright. The urge to flee pulled her. Instead, she gripped Ben's hand firmly, adrenaline roaring in her ears. "Stay close," she urged, moving toward the door. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." The door creaked as she stepped into the night, the air thickening with an unspeakable dread. They stood at the edge of the cornfield, its tall stalks rustling like whispers of long-forgotten souls. The lights flickered again, and primal fear rooted them to the spot. Was this the end of the dreams she had fought so hard to keep alive? With a deep breath, Sarah made her way toward the diner, knowing she had to uncover the truth behind the whispers. The town's heart was rotten, and she could no longer ignore the signs. A shadow darted past, and she turned just in time to see a figure slipping into the diner, ghost-like against the darkness. Curiosity mingled with dread, and Sarah hesitated, heart pounding. A chill swept through her as the door swung shut with a deathly thud behind her. She glanced back at Ben, his expression mirroring her own fear. With a resolute step, Sarah pushed forward, ready to face what horrors awaited her within those cursed walls, unaware of the eyes watching them from the shadows, or the truth that lay waiting, hungry for fear to unleash its dark appetite. The diner was suffocating. The familiar smell of grease now felt rancid, like something had festered beneath the surface for years. Flickering lights cast long shadows, and the hum of the aging refrigerator seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Sarah moved cautiously, scanning the room. Ben stayed close, his little hand gripping her thigh. "Mom, I don't like this," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the oppressive silence. "I know, sweetie," she answered, though she felt the same chill creeping into her bones. They walked toward the counter, where a single plate remained half-eaten, abandoned as if its owner had fled in haste. She bent down, examining the forgotten meal cold and congealed. The diner had been closed for hours, but the remnants felt like a personal message left just for her. What happened here? She muttered, almost to herself. The air shifted. A rattle echoed from the kitchen, and it took everything in her to not bolt out of the place entirely. Ben, she said, her voice shaking, stay right here. Don't go. He pleaded, but she couldn't ignore it. She felt a strange pull, as if something inside her compelled her to explore the source of the sound, to seek out whatever had dragged her family to this moment. As she edged into the kitchen, the darkness seemed to coil around her. The fluorescent lights flickered more violently, threatening to go out completely. Each step sent shards of dread through her spine. Just as she reached for the swinging door to the pantry, another loud thud echoed from behind her, a heavy, hollow sound that made her stomach drop. Ben! She shouted, spinning on her heel, only to find her son still at the entrance, eyes wide with fear. Relief coursed through her, but it was fleeting. When she turned back to the pantry, the door was ajar, swaying as though brushed by an unseen hand. With trembling hands, Sarah pushed the door open, bracing herself for what she might find. Canned goods lined the shelves, dusty and untouched. She took a cautious step inside, the coolness wrapping around her, distinct from the heavy heat of the diner. Mom? Ben called again, his tone wavering. Just a second. She replied, forcing a calmness she didn't feel. Deep down, something rattled her. The shelves felt like they were closing in as she scanned the cramped space. And then she saw a glimmer of something shiny beneath the last row of cans. As she knelt to retrieve it, a chill seemed to glide past her neck. She turned sharply, her heart racing. No one was there. Yet a whisper of laughter echoed, high-pitched and childlike, followed by a chilling silence. It isn't just ghosts, the voice of a little girl echoed through her memories, words whispered in a dream, in a voice that sent icy fingers racing up her spine. They're trapped, they can't leave, heart pounding. She snatched the object from the shelf, revealing a small, tarnished locket. The intrinsic designs were eerily familiar, though she couldn't recall where she'd seen it before. She opened it to find a faded picture, two smiling children, faces obscured, set against the very cornfields that had haunted her. Mom, what's that? Ben stepped into the pantry, courage bolstered by curiosity but shaken by the tension in the air. Before she could respond, the lights flickered one last time, plunging them into darkness. The laughter turned to shrieks, resounding like 1,000 voices enveloping them, layering fear deeper than she'd ever known. Run! She shouted, adrenaline surging as they stumbled out into the alley behind the diner, breathless and terrified. But the fear wasn't over, it had only begun. As they rounded the corner, Ben screamed, pointing toward the field illuminated by flickering lights again, brighter and closer. Mom! They're coming for us! She looked back, something moved in the shadows, something unmistakably human yet grotesque. With one last glance at the diner, she realized that the far more sinister secrets of the Sahara Desert were not confined to its past, they were blooming, hungry for the present. Their only hope lay in desperation, a race against time now set before them. Behind them, something dark stirred, and it was coming for blood. Would they outrun what awaited them, or was it already too late? The damp chill of the night air slammed into Sarah as they burst into the alley. She pulled Ben close, her heart pounded against her ribcage like a caged animal. Panic choked her breath, and dread draped heavily on her shoulders. The field stretched before them, a vast expanse of darkness interrupted by eerie flickers that danced like taunts just beyond the diner. Mom! They're here! Ben whimpered, his grip on her hand tightening like a vice. Fear flickered in her chest, a fierce flame battling the cloud of uncertainty. We need to get away, now. She urged, her voice a mere whisper against the ominous whispers that floated through the air. A distant wail cut through the silence, sending a shiver down her spine. Sarah glanced back towards the diner, then moved toward the safety of the street. But just as they turned, a shadow darted past, lurking just outside the beam of their fading hope. It was a fleeting flicker, a dark flash that seemed to twist and contort like a living nightmare. Did you see that? Sarah asked, breathless, eyes darting. Ben nodded, terror dancing in his blue eyes. We should have turned around, we should have gone home. Just keep moving, she urged, her voice steadier than she felt. They rushed toward the street, the concrete crackled beneath their feet, breaking the deafening silence that enveloped them. Suddenly, the shrieks from the diner erupted into a full chorus. It was a sound so alien, so agonizing, it clawed at her mind. "What's happening?" Sarah cried out, tugging at Ben as they stumbled into the road. "Mom, I don't want to be here." His plea held more desperation than she had ever heard from him, slicing her resolve. "I know," she replied, panic tightening her throat. "We have to go." Before they could take another step, something blocking their way made her blood run cold. A figure loomed at the street's edge, dark and distorted. Its outlines flickered but never fully resolved. It was too tall, too thin, and it moved with unsettling grace, slow yet unnervingly fluid, like it was peeling itself from the shadows. "Mom!" Ben's voice cracked, raw with terror as the air thickened with the threat of something imminent. The figure moved closer, its face obscured in darkness. For each step it took, the shadows warped around it, whispering secrets that sent jolts of fear coursing through Sarah's veins. "Run!" she screamed again, clenching Ben's hand as they bolted down the street. They raced past the diner, the oppressive gloom wrapping around her like an embrace filled with dread. But even as they fled, the chorus of panicked laughter echoed behind them, dissonant and cruel, chasing them like an unrelenting wave. "Why can't we see them?" Ben shouted, his bright terror shining through the dark. "They're hiding in the shadows," Sarah replied, a shiver writhing its way down her spine. "We can't let them catch us." But as they turned a corner, Sarah halted suddenly, eyes widening with horror. In the distance, a light flickered, steady and almost welcoming, breaking through the darkness. It was a gas station, a beacon of safety in the suffocating night. "Look, Ben! There!" she pointed. "We can make it." But as she turned to pull him along, she felt him falter, looking back over his shoulder, frozen in fear. "What, honey?" She pulled him closer, needing to keep him focused. Then she heard the breathy whisper again, "Mom, they're right behind us." The shadow had shifted, and before she could react, the grotesque figure materialized closer, stretching out a long, twisted arm, its fingers clawing towards them as if it were reaching for their very souls. "Run!" she yelled, urging Ben forward, but the dread pierced her lungs like ice. She had stopped moving. As the grounded force of terror loomed larger than life, Sarah felt the urgency of fate tick away. They were almost there, she could feel it. She would not lose him. But would it reach them first? What other secrets lurked in the depths, waiting to be unleashed? The gas station light blinked 1, 2, and failed. And then, silence fell. What awaited them now, in the shroud of that darkness? Sarah's heart hammered in her chest as she and Ben stood frozen, the world around them wrapped in a thick, stifling silence. The gas station light had disappeared, folding the night into a deeper darkness, one that felt alive, breathing, waiting. She squeezed Ben's hand tighter, feeling the tremor of fear ripple through him. "Let us keep moving," she whispered, forcing her own feet to shift. The pavement felt alien beneath her, chilly and unyielding. She wasn't sure where they'd go, but standing still felt like an invitation the shadows might accept. As they ventured forward, the oppressive silence pressed against them, making her acutely aware of every breath. But she was not alone, something else was here, hiding, watching. The air crackled with an unseen electricity, and with every step, a chill crept deeper into her bones. Ben looked back, eyes wide, scanning the darkness. "Mom, I don't like this. I don't want to be here." "Neither do I," she admitted, her throat dry with despair. "But we have to find somewhere safe. Just a bit further." Suddenly, a low chant broke the thick silence, a sound like a hymn, twisted and warped. It flowed through the darkness, wrapping the air around her like a fog shrouded in malice. Sarah's skin crawled. She pulled Ben closer, her mind racing back to everything she'd heard about the town, the cursed tales of those who wandered too far, too deep into the night. They rounded another corner, and the gas station loomed ahead, the windows dark and lifeless. It felt wrong, too quiet, like a predator lying in wait. The flicker of movement caught her eye, a scrap of paper fluttered against the cracked pavement, and she bent to retrieve it. Her fingers brushed across the verge of the paper's surface, and she was met with an image, strange, distorted faces, twisted in anguish. Beneath it were words, "Run while you can." A bitter chill slid down her spine, but just as she considered the warning, the shadows around them deepened, bending and writhing as if alive. "Look!" Ben cried, and she followed his gaze. Near the gas pumps, figures materialized, their contours sinuous and indistinct, as if birthed from the very dark itself. Whispers floated from them, a tangled web of voices that seeped into her mind. "Mom, we need to go." "But where?" Panic surged within her as she took a step back, the ground feeling unsteady. The faces in the shadows twisted, laughing without sound, mocking her fear. Each failure to act felt like a surrender, and her instincts screamed for escape. "Over here!" She abandoned the paper, yanking Ben toward a side entrance, fingers desperate for the solid grip of a door handle. The glass was sticky, like the residue of past anguish, but it opened with a creak, inviting them into the dim interior. Inside, the staleness hit her like a slap spilled soda, long-emptied chips, and something else, something she could only classify as dread. They stepped cautiously, the darkness pressing against their backs as they moved further in. Light from the pumps flickered weakly through the grimy windows, barely penetrating the gloom. "Where should we hide?" Ben asked, his voice a whisper, quivering at the edges. "Anywhere that feels safe," Sarah replied, scanning the room. Her eyes landed on the restroom door, a small sanctuary, if only briefly. Suddenly, the chant grew louder, rising into a horrific cacophony that filled her ears. The figures had followed them, melding into the darkness outside, their shapes pooling against the glass. She felt a sinking dread twisting inside her, each pulse of the chant rattling her heart. "Mom!" Ben screamed, clutching her arm. "They're coming!" She lunged for the restroom door, throwing it open just as the windows shattered, dark forms pressing through shards of glass like sinister invaders from her worst nightmares. Inside the bathroom, she slammed the door shut, breathing in the musty air. There was no lock, no barrier against what lurked outside. They huddled together, terror curling like smoke around them. "We can't stay here," Sarah murmured, panic tangling with desperation. "But what could they do?" The chant echoed, growing ever closer, like a heartbeat in the darkness, alive and hungry. And before she could think of another plan, something twisted the handle from the other side. Would they dare confront what waited outside them? Or would it reach them first? The handle rattled, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She pressed her back against the cold tiles, holding Ben tight against her side. The chant pulsed louder now, a grotesque symphony that twisted through the air like smoke seeking an opening, and the world outside seemed to throb in time with it. "Mom, what's happening?" Ben's voice trembled, a soft whimper barely rising above the din. He looked up, eyes wide and glistening with unshed tears, and she hated that she had no answer for him. All she felt was the encroaching dread, a heavy blanket of fear that threatened to suffocate them. The door shuddered again, more forcefully this time, and Sarah's heart raced. Without thinking, she grabbed a rusted metal trash can from the wall and positioned it at the door, hoping that the weight of the trash and debris might hold the darkness at bay, if only for a moment. "Ben, we have to be quiet," she breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. She avoided looking back at the door, convinced that whatever was out there could sense her fear, could smell it like blood in the water. As the chanting peaked, nearly drowning out her thoughts, the shadows seemed to grow thicker, curling around the edges of the flickering fluorescent light above them like black tendrils, seeking a way in. She squeezed her eyes shut, images flashing through her mind, the sinister faces from the paper, their mouths stretching too wide, too eager, laughter that echoed while they screamed. "Mom!" Ben whimpered again, and she opened her eyes, forcing herself to be strong. "Ben, listen to me," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "We have to find a way out. When the door bursts open, we run. Understand?" He nodded, albeit slowly, his little face reflecting both fear and trust. Another vicious bang thudded against the door, and Sarah winced. The chant turned into a garbled growl that clawed at whatever sanity remained. She leaned closer to Ben, hoping to block out the noise, to create their own little world even if it was about to be shattered. Just as she calmed her racing heart, an agonizing crack split the air, like bones snapping. The restroom door trembled violently this time, and a dark silhouette loomed behind it. Shadows warped and twisted against the light, and she knew it wouldn't hold. "Run!" she shouted without thinking. The door splintered, and as it swung inward, Sarah's primal instincts kicked in. She yanked Ben behind her, using her body as a shield. The first shadow burst through, rushing past her like a fleeting nightmare. It was almost human, yet entirely wrong, its limbs elongated, its face a twisted mockery of familiarity that sent revulsion clawing through her gut. They surged forward, pushing past the invading darkness. The gas station was a labyrinth of shadows, each corner promising salvation or doom. They dashed into the main room, past the shattered windows and flying debris. Outside, the night pulsed with ominous life, and the chanting morphed into howls, beckoning them toward some unseen horror. "Where now?" Ben cried, panic setting into his features. "Over there." She pointed to the door leading outside. It loomed, dimly lit by moonlight, almost like a safe haven. But as they rushed forward, more figures emerged from the depths, their distorted forms erupting into a frenzy of movement. Sarah felt her limbs grow heavy, her resolve blurring with sheer terror. Would this door lead to freedom, or would it drag them deeper into unfathomable despair? "Go!" she shouted again, sprinting toward freedom. But as she reached for the handle, an icy grip clamped down on her wrist. Will it pull her back into the shadows? Or will she and Ben escape the terror lurking just beyond? The grip around her wrist tightened, a cold and unnatural force that sent jolts of panic through Sarah's body. She could feel the chill of it sinking into her skin, a stark contrast to the sweat she worked up in the chaos. In that instant, everything else faded: the chanting, the howling wind, even Ben's fearful gasps. All that mattered was that grip. "Mom!" Ben cried, eyes wide with terror as he pulled at her arm desperately. "Mom, don't let it take you." With a surge of adrenaline, Sarah twisted her wrist, breaking free from the freezing embrace that threatened to drag her backwards. She didn't look behind her, driven by the instinct to protect Ben at all costs. The door loomed closer, its handle glinting in the dim light, but shadows surged all around them, undulating like living smoke. "Sarah!" A guttural voice echoed from the dark, unfurling like a snake's hiss. "You can't escape." She froze for a heartbeat, blood running cold. Familiarity clawed at her mind, a name lingering just out of reach. Inside that shadow, amid all the chaos, a face began to form, a face she had seen only in the nightmares of dull nights spent nursing wounds from her past. "No, no, no," she murmured, shaking her head, though a part of her wanted to believe it, wanted to understand why it was here now. "It can't be you." Ben tugged at her pants leg, eyes darting back to the oncoming figures, monstrous, contorted things that flowed deeper out of the blackness, lured by the flares of light escaping from fractured glass. She couldn't stall now, not when every second felt like a countdown to oblivion. "Run!" she shouted once more, thrusting Ben ahead of her, and they hurtled through the door. Outside, the night air was crisp, shocking against her fevered skin. She could see the distant glow of streetlights, like beacons of hope shimmering against the malevolence of the landscape. But the ground crunched beneath her feet, and as they sprinted towards the street, the road loomed like a mirage, swaying just out of reach. And then she heard it. Whispering. A chorus of voices wrapped around her, seeping through the cracks of her resolve. "You can't leave," they intoned, "you're one of us now." "No!" she screamed, the word ripping from her throat. "We want to be part of this." Ben glanced back, confusion and fear etched on his small face. "Mom, what is happening? Why do they want us?" "I don't know," she yelled back, panic tightening around her heart. She wanted to grab him, to shield him from this nightmare, but the shadows danced closer now. A flash caught her eye, a flicker of movement behind her in the gas station, an unsettling realization clawed at her thoughts. What if this was more than a chase? What if the monsters had already infected her reality? The streetlights wavered, and her surroundings morphed, twisting like a funhouse mirror. The ground felt spongy, and she stumbled. Ben shouted as a shadow lunged at them, its figure soaring above them like a bird of prey. "Run, Sarah!" She heard Ben scream, but she couldn't if fear immobilized her. Instead, she turned, fury igniting in her chest. "You want to take my son?" she roared. The shadows recoiled, hesitant for the first time, leaving a gap that seemed to ripple like water. In that fleeting moment, hope flickered. She grabbed Ben's hand, pulling him close, ready to fight their way through. But as they charged forward, the whispering crescendoed, encroaching on her mind, images flashing, memories of things lost, of choices born from desperation. Would she become one of them? Would Ben? The shadows surged once more, and Sarah felt a cold tendril wrap around her legs, pulling her to the ground. "Mom!" Ben screeched, but she struggled, fighting against the weight of darkness. No escape. And then she saw a glimpse of light above the chaos, a sliver of hope. But was it a trap? Could they reach it before it swallowed them whole? The creeping dread urged her forward, but with each step, the grasp of the shadows tightened around them. She couldn't let them win. As they broke free from the shadows, a new form loomed into the light. A familiar face emerging from the darkness, one Sarah hadn't expected. "Sarah," it called softly, voice dripping with familiarity. Her heart sank. That voice. What choice would she make next? Would it be her son's safety, or would she step into the past, facing the ones who had haunted her nightmares? The night deepened, and she faced the figure, breathless, heart racing. "Do you want to know the truth?" it whispered, eyes glimmering with ancient knowledge. What truth? What power lay beneath the surface of the terror? Make or break the moment had arrived. "Do you want to know the truth?" the figure repeated, its voice laced with a familiarity that sickened Sarah. One step forward, and she could see the contours of the face-haunted eyes and a twisted smile that sent shivers down her spine. "No." Sarah stumbled back, pulling Ben with her. "You're not real, you can't be." Her breath hitched. She refused to acknowledge the possibility that this was more than a nightmare. But it laughed, a guttural sound that echoed against the desolate landscape. "You can't escape your past, Sarah. It has come for you." Ben grasped her hand tighter, confusion morphing to understanding as he felt the terror radiating off his mother. The shadows swirled like a tempest, and every flicker of light deepened the darkness. "Mom, who is that?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Someone I thought was gone," she managed, fighting against the wave of dread that crashed over her. Memories surged, dark nights steeped in sorrow, choices made from fear. The figure spoke again, its voice like silk, wrapping around her heart. "Sarah, give in, join us. The shadows are a part of you," it implored, a twisted invitation that feasted upon her doubt. "No!" she screamed, but the word felt weak against the pull of the darkness. The whispers grew louder, clawing at her sanity, creeping into the edges of her thoughts. "You need us," they whispered. "You are one of us." Ben pulled at her. "Mom, run." But her legs felt heavy, bound by invisible weights of the past. In that moment of hesitation, the shadows lurched forward, their fingers extending like grotesque appendages aimed for Ben. Sarah's heart pounded, blood thundering in her ears. "Stay back," she cried, desperation fueling her strength. "You will not take him." With a primal scream, she pushed through the pain, yanking Ben behind her. They dashed past the figure, feeling a piercing chill that stung their skin like needles. The shadows shrieked, angry and hungry, but they broke free into a clearing, a pocket untouched by the swirling darkness. Panting, Sarah turned to Ben, who was wide-eyed, trembling. "What was that, Mom?" "That was my past," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I thought I escaped it." But the shadows regrouped, inching closer to their sanctuary. "Do you feel it?" the figure taunted from beyond the clearing. "You cannot hide from who you are. You cannot run from what you've done." "Shut up!" Sarah yelled, clutching Ben tightly. "We're moving forward. We have to." Panic surged through her. They needed a way out, a way to escape the grip of the sinister past that threatened to consume them both. She scanned the area, desperate for an exit, but the shadows pressed in like a tide, relentless. For a moment, her mind flashed to the stories she'd heard, of people who faced their fears and emerged stronger. But could she face that figure, the embodiment of her guilt, head-on? "Mom, look." Ben pointed. "That way." He saw something, a faint glimmer in the distance, like a lighthouse guiding them through the storm. Hope ignited within her. "Hold my hand, Ben. We'll make it together." They sprinted toward the light, but as they ran, the whispers crescendoed, turning to agonizing screams. "You belong to us!" they shrieked, echoing around her, shattering her resolve. With every step they took, the ground felt softer, like it wanted to swallow them. "We're almost there," she encouraged Ben, even as her heart raced with fear and doubt. "Mom! Please!" he cried, looking back at the figure, whose grin widened, drawn forward by their desperation. Sarah hurled herself forward, pulling Ben with all her strength. "Faster!" she urged. The shadows clawed at them, cold and grasping. Just as she felt the pull of despair grip her heart, the glowing light surged closer, swallowing the darkness around them. Then, a sharp, piercing scream ruptured through the air, slicing through the whispers, and froze her in place. The figure erupted in fury, its face twisting into a mask of rage. "You can't run forever. You made this choice." An electric shock ran through the ground as the shadows pulsed violently, a black vortex spiraling into chaos. "What do we do, Mom?" Ben's voice cut through the panic as he clutched her hand tighter. "I don't know," she gasped, feeling the weight of the shadows pressing down on them. "But we can't let it catch us." As the chaos swirled, Sarah sensed something shifting within. Tomorrow, she would need to face not just the truth, but the darkness that had tied her to the figure. They surged ahead with desperation, reaching toward the light hoping it wasn't another trick of the haunting shadows. The brightness enveloped them, drawing them in, as the darkness roared in anger. Would they break free, or would they be forever ensnared in the haunting whispers of the past? The final moment approached, and the choices between darkness and light had never felt heavier. As they burst into the light, it wasn't the warm embrace of safety Sarah had imagined. Instead, it felt cold and blistering, like a fog that clung to her skin. The world around them shifted, colors fading into a monochrome of whites and grays. Sarah squinted, searching for something familiar, but everything had changed once again. "Mom, where are we?" Ben's voice trembled as he looked around, eyes wide with fear. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. I don't know, Ben." The landscape was different, vast, and empty. Only endless dunes lay before them, twisting like the tendrils of her own mind. Something about the place felt wrong, wronger than before. Shadows danced just beyond the edges of her vision, the echoes of the figure still haunting her thoughts. Suddenly, a sound broke through the silence, whispers pooling like poison in the air. The voice was unmistakable, eerily familiar. "Sarah, you thought you could escape? You've only just begun to face us." The figure emerged from the swirling sand, its shape shifting like smoke. Terror gripped Sarah as she stepped back, clutching Ben protectively. "No! We're not here for you." "Ah, but here, it's too late," it crooned, its smile stretching unnaturally. The ground rumbled beneath their feet, and the shadows, now more alive than ever, surged around them, curling and twisting, eager to engulf them once again. "Mom! Run!" Ben shouted, breaking her trance. They turned sharply, dashing across the shifting sands as the winds picked up, howling reminders of everything buried within the depths of Sarah's past. Each gust whispered her secrets, clawing at her memories, unraveling the delicate string that held her sanity together. They stumbled before the figure loomed large in their peripheral, inching ever closer. An unyielding dread filled Sarah. "Ben, keep your eyes forward," she urged, but her heart felt heavy with the weight of uncertainty. Light flickered ahead. Desperate hope ignited once more as they sprinted toward it. "Almost there, baby," she gasped out, but in one brief moment, she dared to glance back. It was closer than she thought, its twisted features merging with the shadows, a grotesque mockery of her deepest fears. The vengeful whispers grew louder, consuming her resolve. "Sarah, you can't escape." "Shut up!" she screamed, the words tearing from her throat. But her fury felt weak against the storm of shadows. Just then, Ben stumbled. She whirled around, reaching for him, panic surging. "Ben!" He was frozen, eyes locked onto the figure, his horrified expression piercing through her. Mom, it's not just a shadow, it's a part of you. Every nerve in her body sparked with dread. No. It can't be. She shouted, but the words spilled as a shaky whisper. A truth she had hidden all along, now came rushing back like bile. In that moment, the shadows coiled tighter around them, blurring the line between past and present, guilt and fear. The light seemed to fade as the heavy gravity of the figure encroached. It was fed by her hesitation, thriving on her inner turmoil, and suddenly everything felt perilously heavy. Ben, listen. We have to go, now. She grabbed his hand, but the shadows clawed at their heels, relentless. As they fought through the darkness, the whispers morphed into screams of her own past, the sins she had buried, the choices she had made. You belong to us, Sarah. It roared, its voice a cacophony that sent her heart racing. She pressed forward, fear gnawing at her insides, knowing she couldn't let it consume him too. We have to keep moving, don't stop. But the ground gave way underfoot. Sarah gasped as they both slipped, tumbling into an abyss, grasping for something, anything to hold on to. And then in a blinding flash, a new darkness enveloped them entirely. In the void, a chilling laugh echoed, taunting. Choose wisely, Sarah, the light isn't what it seems. As consciousness threatened to slip away, one last thought clawed at her mind. What had she truly unleashed? Darkness mercilessly embraced them, and time lost all meaning. The haunting truth awaited on the other side. What awaited her now could forever change everything. Could she handle what lay ahead? The world was a suffocating void, an oppressive nothingness that pressed against Sarah's skin, smothering her thoughts. She felt as though she were drowning without water. Ben's hand gripped hers tightly, anchoring her to reality amid the chaos that ensued. The laughter echoed again, sinister and cold, reverberating off unseen walls. You've come so far, only to fall right back into my arms. Stop. Sarah shouted, voice breaking. The darkness lurked, rubbing against her, inching ever closer. If she listened, it would swallow her whole. You don't own us. Such a brave little soul, it sneered, the voice morphing into a twisted parody of her own. But bravery won't save you. Lights flickered around them, weak and flickering. Just shadows, fleeting glimpses of what could be. The shifting outlines were hardly reassuring. The ground trembled, and the abyss seemed to pull at her, hungry, greedy. Mom, where are we? Ben whispered, his small voice strained. He clutched at her leg, looking around wide-eyed. I can't see anything. Focus on my voice, Ben. Just hold on, she urged. She felt the weight of responsibility, the need to protect him clawing at her. But the shadows were swirling, tearing at the edges of her will. Then, a sudden shift as if the ground itself was rearranging. They were lifted, thrown sideways as the darkness swirled around them like a storm. A pit opened beneath them, glowing red, like a wound festering in the earth. Look into the void, Sarah. What do you want to find? Her breath quickened. Nothing, she screamed. I want to escape. But the specter of her guilt was relentless. Images flooded her mind, the faces of those she had let down, the voices of memories suppressed, all crawling to the surface. Each one sharper than the last. No! Go away! She shouted, shutting her eyes against the assault of her own thoughts. But it was too late. The darkness invited her doubts in, wrapping them around her throat like a noose. Ben's grip faltered, and she spun around, panic plunging deeper into her heart. I'm right here, buddy. But he was gone, slipping through her fingers like fine sand. Mom! His plea shrieked through the void, triggering a deep stress only a mother could know. Ben! She screamed, her voice echoing into silence. Then, she sensed it, the atmosphere shifted. The laughter quieted, darkness replaced by a dim glow. Could it be? Light, real light? It flickered through the suffocating shadows, beckoning like a lighthouse to a lost sailor. Mom, hurry! I'm here! Ben's voice broke through. Relief surged through Sarah. She dashed toward the glowing figure that emerged ahead, the outline of her son becoming clearer with each step. The shadows clutching at her ankles howled in protest, but she didn't care. "Ben!" she called, racing forward. But the landscape warped again, a cruel trick of fate. She stumbled, the radiant light flickering before her, as if it were a cruel mirage. "No, don't lose him. Just a little further," Ben cried, his small voice resonating like an echo in a nightmare. She reached her hands out, stretching, desperately fighting against the shadows that threatened to pull her back. Then she felt something cold wrap around her wrist, yanking her, dragging her back into darkness. "You cannot leave. This is your prison," it hissed. But the glimmer of hope remained. "We are more than this. I won't let you take him." As her heart raced, strength surged from within. She seized the light, clutching it tightly. "Ben! Take my hand." There was a chain of shadow and light. Her choice could either shatter their bond or fortify it. Would they break free or fall deeper into the abyss? As they reached toward each other, darkness raged against them, screaming in fury. Would the blood of her past hold her back, or would they find freedom together? A brilliant flash erupted, and with it came a shattering silence. Where would their journey lead now? Would they uncover the truth buried deep in the shadows, or would the shadows consume everything they had left? The blinding flash enveloped them, an explosion of light that sent the shadows recoiling like roaches under a flashlight. Sarah felt warmth spread through her fingers as she and Ben reached for each other. The darkness screamed, a chorus of anguish that echoed off invisible walls, clawing at their very souls. "Mom!" Ben's voice rang clear despite the chaos, his little silhouette becoming more defined with each passing moment. "Ben!" Sarah shouted, her heart pounding with the urgency she had never known. Everything within her surged forward, an instinctual fight as every ounce of fear transformed into unwavering determination. She grasped Ben's hand, anchoring him to the light they desperately needed. Together they shined as one. The shadows writhed, heavy tendrils swiping at them like monstrous serpents, but Sarah felt the glow of their bond push them forward, unfurling their connection like a shield against the impending dread. The darkness screamed back, faltering, but the shadows would not give up easily. "They want to take us. Stick together," she shouted, forcing her voice to remain steady around the swirling panic. Together they sprinted toward the light, which pulsed rhythmically, beckoning for their escape. In that moment of clarity, Sarah could see fleeting glimpses of her past swirl behind them, faces of loved ones lost and mistakes made, all merging into the angry mass of darkness trailing them. But she wouldn't look back, not now. "Mom!" Ben's voice trembled again. "Don't let go. I want." She gritted her teeth, feeling the shadows tug at her like cold fingers trying to pull them back. "Just a bit more." With each stride, the oppressive weight of guilt and fear lessened, like heavy chains gradually breaking free, expanding ahead toward the growing brilliance. Then, the world shifted, and they raced through a tunnel of light. As they exited the spectral cocoon, the ground solidified beneath their feet, the light bursting all around them into a kaleidoscope of vivid colors that filled the hazy landscape. They landed on soft grass instead of sand. It was an unfamiliar yet comforting world bathed in the warmth of a sun rising over the distant horizon. Sarah inhaled deeply, the air crisp and full of promise. But suddenly, figures emerged before them, those from the shadows, the embodiment of her past, the ones who had haunted her dreams from afar. Sarah they called, a twisted amalgamation of voices blending into a compelling melody. "You cannot escape, you'll always be one of us." "No!" she shouted defiantly, feeling the courage blaring in her chest. "You may follow me, but you won't control me. I am not defined by my past." Ben stood firm beside her, eyes wide with a mixture of awe and fear, but brimming with belief in his mother. "You will face us, Sarah," the figures warned, inching closer. "No," Sarah said louder, drawing on the massive well of love she had for her son. "I choose to leave you behind. I won't lose myself again." Each swift step she took felt like a declaration. The figures wilting back in shock, unable to comprehend her power. The grip of shadows started to peel away, the light enveloping her in warmth, scattering the dark forms like dandelion seeds in the breeze. As the shadows dissolved around them, a warm wind brushed against her skin, the dawn breaking overhead. And with it came an illumination, clarity that filled the void of confusion. Sarah realized her fear had morphed, too, and rather than being swallowed, she could choose to remember. "Ben, it's time to face the truth," she said, kneeling before him. "I am here for you, and together, we will forge our path. There is no running from what happened, we make peace. We choose light over dark." Ben nodded, squeezing her hand tighter. "Together, Mom." And it was with those words that they awakened a power deep within, a defiance that rang across the landscape, a commitment to move forward, unshackled from the ghosts of their past. As they turned toward the shimmering horizon, the new day heralded a shift. A welcome, brighter future awaited them, infused with hope and the promise of healing. They would cherish memories while embracing the beautiful uncertainty of what lay ahead. In that moment, surrounded by radiant light, Sarah and Ben felt a rush of warmth, a silent assurance that they were free at last. They walked forward not just into a new dawn, but toward acceptance, love, and unwavering strength. Together, they stepped into a life renewed, leaving the shadows behind for good. Remember, you need to subscribe now to stay updated and never miss out on gripping stories like this one. Smash that like button now, seriously, your support makes all the difference. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about their journey and what it means. And don't wait even one more second, share this video immediately with at least 5 friends who need this conclusion in their lives. Your support matters, and you are part of this story.